if they, we can identify them later and we can allow some opportunity for that. The first action item, only action item number 1, consider adoption of the minutes of the December 7th meeting of this committee. Are there any questions from any of the committee members?
I move approval.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please. I'm sorry. I'm gonna just announce to the public that if there's any comment at any time, please get our attention, because it does take time to ask each time. So we prefer that you raise your hand and we'll notice it and we'll call on you. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead with the vote on this this item. Roll call, please.
Director Adams,
Aye.
Director Edwards,
Aye.
Director Riley.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0.
Okay, good. The discussion items are next. No action required and no action expected. Item 2 on the replenishment fund. I'm glad to see this on discussion, Dave, but you're going to be give us a report first, you or Jonathan?
Yeah, and I'm not sure how much discussion we're going to get into. It's mostly to begin to help our board members better understand how the accounting works. So I've included both, two pieces of the Water Masters annual report. Item 2A, or Exhibit 2A, is the updated replenishment assessment unit costs. And so these unit costs are applied to any overages for the natural safe yield and the operating yield. And so there are 2 separate unit costs, and they are assessed in combination with each other. So the calculation of the unit cost is included in the 2A. That's basically, the 2947 per acre foot for exceeding your natural safe yield, and the 737 for exceeding your operating yield as pumpers on the Seaside Basin. And certainly John can weigh in some extra there. And then item 2B, especially beginning a couple of pages down, you can actually see how the replenishment assessments were calculated for water year 2020. A couple of things that you have to keep in mind. The second paragraph in the staff note, of course, describes what the replenishment assessment is. But very much in the back of the adjudication is this credit towards replenishment assessment. So if a pumper is exceeding its limits and incurs a replenishment assessment, but is also working on a physical solution with an expenditure of monies towards that physical solution, then the water master can offset the expenditures required for replenishment assessments with the expenditures being made by the entity. So in Cal-Am's case, they are working on a water supply project, whereas in City of Seaside's municipal systems case, they don't have a project that they're working on. So City of Seaside traditionally has been paying a cash replenishment assessment into the water master's accounts, whereas Cal-Am has been given a credit to offset their replenishment assessment by their expenditures towards originally the regional desal project, and then most recently the MPWSP, the water supply project, primarily through the Monterey pipeline, because that was approved and is under construction, whereas the other expenditures are not yet fully permitted. So with that, I don't think we need to spend a whole lot of time on 2A. You can kind of see how the various alternatives, if they did exist, were calculated as to what their unit cost is, and then how a kind of an average unit cost was determined. But 2B bears some discussion, and I need to increase my view.
Could I just ask a quick question?
Yeah, please.
I'm not sure if this is A or B actually, but I'm unclear about the pots of money. So as an example, we, the ratepayers, are paying for the water supply project. We paid for that pipeline. That came off our bills. If Cal-Am had overdrafted to $1 million worth, would we, the ratepayers, have to pay that? Or would that come out of a different pot of Cal-Am's?
Right. So currently, it is we, the ratepayers. So if you recall, the application to the Public Utilities Commission is to fund and build a project and recover it in rates. And that's what was approved. So whenever a component element of that water supply project becomes what we call used and useful, then it goes into the rates. And because an overdraft on the Seaside Basin can be, your replenishment assessment can be offset by an actual investment in a physical solution, that would mean that component of that $1 million of replenishment assessment had already been paid for the Monterey Pipeline, let's say, and therefore the ratepayers are paying for it in their rates. And so it's kind of a follow the money thing. You're paying your bill covers the Monterey Pipeline expenditures cover the replenishment assessment. So the credit over here on the Watermaster's ledger is a non-cash contribution to the Watermaster's account that was offset by the ratepayers paying for the Monterey Pipeline, so to speak. Whereas Seaside, which I think had an overdraft, let's see, their calculation. Yeah, so if you go to the second page of Exhibit 2B, you can see that the two standard producers who have an overproduction, the first is California American Water, with a natural safe yield overproduction for last year of 334 acre feet. Seaside's was 32 acre feet. And then they also had operating yield overproduction. And so they were assessed for both. And you can see it's almost $1 million to Cal-Am, $92,000 for Seaside for the net safe yield overproduction. And then $165,000 and $25,000 for the operating yield over production assessment. And the total assessments are in the right-hand column. So Seaside would be on the hook for their $116,000 as a cash payment. Cal-Am will apply for, and the Watermaster will review and say, well, we've made 1.1 million in investment on the physical solution for the long-term water supply solution to get water into the system to offset their overpumping of the Seaside Basin, and therefore 1.1 million of those expenditures have been satisfied. So there will be no cash payment to the Watermaster's accounts. And I think part of the questions that have been coming up are, is the Watermaster's calculation of that, $2,900 per acre foot assessment of, an appropriate number, given that it's kind of an amalgam of potential alternatives. And then and it's written in the adjudication, but is not having to pay in and instead offsetting already expended funds for the water supply project a satisfactory way of doing the accounting. I don't have an opinion on either. I just wanted to kind of drag you down this rabbit hole. George has been our representative on the Watermaster. I'm assuming he'll probably get reappointed because it takes a while to learn the ins and outs, and another year would probably be good. But this is just kind of a rundown of how it works. And John, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Could I just intervene a second here? I have a series of questions or challenges to what I think the Watermaster is doing. And I would like to just engage you, not in solving my problem or answering all my questions, but to see if going down this road has any value. And I would like, Dave, you and John, not necessarily to agree, but to sort this stuff out in some fashion to help me understand a little more, because I want to promote several suggested changes to the water master. And I don't know if I have the votes for it, and I don't know if it's even structured enough to even make a proposal. But I want to share with you some of my concerns and where I think I would like to go. And I think that might speed up the discussion a little bit. I mean, unless, Alvin, you have a thing you want to add. Mary, jump in anytime, but that's what I'd like to do. Okay, first of all, you talked about the amalgamated collection of costs that end up in this 2,700 number or whatever it is right now.
Yeah, 2947.
2872. Here's what I don't like about that formula. They do a weighted average between Cal-Am's desal and Pure Water Monterey. They do a weighted average for those two, and those are the two most expensive things. And that ends up with a number, which is one of three numbers used in the calculation. The other two numbers are not weight averaged or flow averaged. They're just raw numbers, and they're very low numbers. So that brings that whole, the number for calculating overdraft expenses or the value of the overdraft, it diminishes that number almost in half of what I think it ought to be. And I'd like to share some of it. Anyway, that's what I like. It seemed to me the whole formula for those four cost issues should be flow averaged, whatever, weighted average. That's what I mean, weighted average. The first two numbers are, the next two numbers are not. And it's an unfair equation, I think. Just to create a value number, that's all. What we do with it is something else. My calculation is that if it were weighted average, that number would not be 2,800, it would be 4,200 plus. And it changes the nature of the numbers of the replenishment fund. It would double those numbers. Okay, second point. Cal-Am is by my reading of the lawsuit or the order from the court was that Cal-Am's numbers is supposed to be reflecting and a cost, a practical solution, but a cost. I'm looking for the specific language here. Oh, that Cal-Am contends. This is the Cal-Am phrase. It's in 3M1D. It doesn't matter. I can point this out to you. The Cal-Am can calculate expenditures made for water supply augmentation that Cal-Am contends has or will result in replenishment of the basin. Now, it seems like it's tied directly to the basin, not to a water supply that's entire to a entire peninsula. Now, maybe they could fraction that in some fashion to make it a little more relevant to the basin, but I don't see how. I've asked for the work papers, by the way, from the water master to look at that. I just want to understand it a little more, just so I'm asking the right question, or I'm going in the direction that I think makes sense. But the pipeline, for example, which is in their number for expenditure, which gets up to the $1 million plus, this calculation for them, has nothing to do with replenishing the basin, unless you count the 700 acre feet they're going to not take.
Right.
And if that's true, that $700, that 700 acre feet should be at Cal-Am's cost dollars, not an amalgamated number that's spread across everybody. That's another side of the question I have. Okay. And if that's the case, Cal-Am's costs should be in the 6,000 range, not 4,000 and definitely not 2,000.
Yeah, I think on that one in particular, because it's all kind of prospective, it could be Pure Water Monterey expansion or it could be desal. Both of them have been sized to assume that there would be 700 acre feet of in lieu recharge. So looking forward, I think maybe averaging those two together does make some sense. But you're absolutely right. The other supply resources in there are not flow rated or flow adjusted. But I get your point. Number one, are we treating all of the alternatives correctly? And if it's really only 700 acre feet of the total, then are we correct in using the 6250? Which I think the answer is going to be yes, but I understand what you're saying. Are we diluting down the assessment by using math and lower numbers in the lower alternatives to reduce the actual assessment?
Okay, well, that's that. If I just set off a light bulb, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
at this point. My general conclusion on the replenishment fund that it's toothless. There's no enforcement element to that, and I don't know if the water master is satisfied with that relationship or not. I don't know, but that's kind of another question I want to ask. Let's see, there's a base management plan, base management action plan. It's supposed to have, and I'll ask John if he can kind of just track this back into the system a little bit to see if it's true or not. Supposedly, the court order said that the water master shall develop a plan of action to contain seawater intrusion. I don't know. I haven't seen any reference to that kind of language, containing seawater intrusion. And maybe there's no real way to do it, but I don't think the water master has addressed that in its action plan. And I can't find it anyway. And I think it's a weak point in their management action plan in general, because they talk about modeling numbers and data and well data and all sorts of chemical, composition numbers and all that. But there's no plan to fight seawater intrusion. There's a lot to understand seawater intrusion and perhaps measure it, but not to oppose it or contain it. And that's the question. And I want to pursue a little more. If you're still with me a little bit, I only have a couple more points I want to make. By the way, Dave, and for the rest of the committee, at the last water master meeting, there was a note in the minutes that the minutes of the water master meeting that without desal, the 700 acre feet would not be available to the district, to the water master. And I said, whoa. I said, Pure Water Monterey has all the plans, and everything that's the district has done has plans to pick up that obligation. And so Bob Jake said, yes, he agrees with that. And I asked that just the minutes be changed for that purpose. You may remember too, George, that I actually came on to that meeting and made that statement. Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay. Okay. There was a little bit of pushback from the Cal-Am rep, but it wasn't substantive. It just said, well, I don't know that I agree with that totally, but if it's just an adjustment to the minutes, then that's where it is. So there may be a little pushback coming on that anyway. Let me see. The one thing I wanted to add is that the number of options that they have, and maybe this is to John's ears, the number of options they use to address alternate sources of water. They talk about expanding ASR, and I don't know if we have plans to expand ASR beyond what they're talking about. They're talking about adding another 1,000 acre feet. And I don't know if there are there active plans in that area? Okay, I'm just seeing you nod your head no, but my point is that this list of potential sources of water to replenish the basin does not include Pure Water Monterey expansion. It does not include, oh, well, that's the main objection. Then there are a couple other points about that. But anyway, I just don't think they're doing a complete review of that option about how to replenish the basin. The last point I want to make on this, and it's mainly to get your input to help me understand. I won't say Mary too, but to help us understand if some of these suggested relooks, I'm thinking, just a review, if some of those questions have enough substance to them that I'm not trying you to make my arguments for me, but I would like your reaction to going down this road a little bit, and we'll see where it goes. Then the next meeting is not till February, by the way, early February.
You raised some good points in that. We've always talked about ASR expansion is possible. We've looked at it. John's identified or scoped some potential projects. We've always talked about putting in our own wells or a rainy collection field or something. But there's no active, we're not spending any money on design right now or any of that. And so to your point, we need a large scale permanent water supply. So if desal moves forward or Pure Water Monterey moves forward, those really are your only alternatives to then free up that 700 acre feet per year of in-lieu recharge, or even come up with some scheme to do some protective well level additions, even though that's not very well spec'd out by the Water Master yet either. So the only reason we would do ASR expansion to augment the Seaside Basin is if one of those two projects, Pure Water expansion or desal, didn't move forward and people were left scratching their heads saying, well, what do we do? What do we do next? And we'd say, well, absent anything else, let's expand ASR. So I think that does go to what you're talking about earlier, where if you give credit to it as if it's a real project and it moves that number down or it moves the replenishment assessment down, are we doing a disservice? Are we underestimating what the replenishment costs really are? Because you're not, as I said, you're not going to do that as a solution if you do a big old desal plant. And so, yeah, looking into that, and RUAP, I think, is that still on that list as well?
Yes, it's on the list too, yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, unless they provide either raw water for replenishment or offsetting water so that Caliam can do in-lieu recharge by not pumping, then maybe we shouldn't be even including them. But this is what the Water Master has been doing now, kind of gotten in the habit of, and so every year it's just update the numbers behind them, but not update the concept. And I think it might be worth some discussion, maybe at the TAC level at the Water Master, maybe not, maybe at the business, whatever that committee meeting, and budget and finance committee.
Yeah, and I did ask Bob Jakes, would he just try to rethink the replenishment formula a little bit just to get some new thought? And I haven't shared this information with him. I've only been pulling this together in the last few days. And I guess my last question on this is, it still is, it bothers me somewhat that the Water Master took a proactive position and presented it to the Coastal Commission in support of desal. And it bothers me a little bit because this is the difference. Pure Water Monterey and Pure Water Monterey expansion sends that water through the basin. Cal-Am water doesn't go through the basin. So for the Water Master to support a desal project when water does not go through the basin, when they have an opportunity to support expanded reclaimed water projects, or two segments of it, for water that does go through the basin. Any water that goes through the basin is a help to the basin. Any water. So I want to argue that I want them to take an equal position in support of the expansion project, because that water very specifically will benefit the basin because it goes through the basin. And I'm going to try to go down this road and see where it goes.
And there's different ways to skin that cat, because some desal water will enter the basin. That's what ASR wells 5 and 6 are for.
Mm-hmm.
Pure water, Monterey water, apart from the operating reserve, doesn't stay in the basin. You could take the 3,500 acre feet per year and say, well, if there's truly a 6 month travel time, then 1,750 acre feet a year are sitting in the basin on average at any one time. You could probably do similar math for wells 5 and 6 for desal water. So none of these that operate in a manner of putting water in and taking it out, so temporary storage, really has a long-term benefit, except for a minor long-term benefit. The reserves, on the other hand, are 1,000 acre feet. That'll sit there. It's intended to sit there really forever, and if it gets tapped, it has to be replenished, and that number rises to 1,750 acre feet. But conceptually, they could leave desal water in longer if you're producing and you're getting way ahead of your demand, and you're not just balancing morning and evening versus nighttime needs. You try to operate the plant on a fairly steady basis, but we get up and we shower in the morning, we dine at night, and things like that. And so you're taking the peaks off. So there is some benefit that desal provides by being in the ground for a period of time. But as we've said, they could also one could also make the argument that ASR, as you begin to use it as a drought reserve, let's say the CDO is now lifted, you've got your water project on, and we'll ignore the parallel pipeline issue, that's not today's issue, but if you are maximizing ASR, there will be years where you don't need all of it. And so now you're starting to build up the reservoir behind the dam, only it's in the ground at the Seaside Basin. That has a benefit to the basin, but at some point you're going to want to tap it. And so doing the scenario analysis that lines up with operations is a little bit hard, because you could operate that whole system 3 different ways, 4 different ways. But conceptually, every drop that you put in could have some benefit. Certainly, even without putting water in, if you've now made an alternative supply and you can do the in lieu recharge, that's a benefit as well, that could be calculated. So I think your point's well made, that water that goes into the basin should count more than water that doesn't find its way through the basin.
Yeah.
But again, if the idea of any major water project is to provide enough water that you don't have to pump 700 acre feet you've got a right to, then both of those could be deemed, any project that does that could be deemed to have a benefit to the basin by leaving water in the basin. The thing we don't know, of course, is actual recharge is better than in lieu recharge, because if you're saying, well, based on historical numbers and modeling, we think that Cal-Am could safely pull 1,474 acre feet out, and now they're going to leave 700 acre feet of that behind and not pump it. But going forward, if climate change happens and rainfall is different and the slow recharge of the Santa Margarita is different, then leaving your pumping right of 700 acre feet per year unpumped doesn't mean it's actually recharging at that rate. And so you could be losing ground even while thinking you're providing, protective replacement water through in lieu. But, anything can be modeled. Trying to tie it to the right dollar number to put on replenishment assessments yeah, I'm not sure where that leads us. I mean, this is pretty early in the discussion.
Well, and I'm just, I'm just trying to raise some questions where we can clarify and maybe get a little more practical or I think a more logical approach to the replacement numbers, whether the money is there or not, and whether it's ever going to support itself or not. The reason I'm a little more concerned these days than I was maybe 6 months ago is that there seems to be an increased interest by the staff, as well as a couple of members of the Water Master, to fill the basin. And I mean, that's a Santa Claus trip, because there's no money and there's no water, or at least there's nothing of the scale of that. And I just don't want the I don't want the Water Master board members to go down that road too far. And I'm speaking specifically of perhaps the Seaside representatives, because they have a more vested interest in what's happening there because of their own muni system. But I think there needs to be some rethinking of some of these issues, and how valuable some water in the basin. If you can't get it all, at least get some, and that's where I want to go.
Yeah, I think that's an important point too, because this whole concept of providing protective well levels, which is additional incremental water over and above the 700 acre feet per year that's been discussed, has never been really planned out. I mean, there's no infrastructure map or plan, or, here are the injection sites. Here's how many lineal feet of pipe we need to get the water to those injection sites. Here's what the impact's going to be. That's the concept of needing more water has been discussed, almost a decade. Todd has updated I think it was, or Montgomery, I can't recall. John, you would know, but, they revisited it again not that long ago and said, yeah, there's been no change in how much water is needed for protected well levels. But even at the TAC, where the last, just a few years ago now, maybe 07, I'm sorry, or 11, I don't know, I wrote it in one of my previous staff notes, and the Coastal Commission is aware of this. Cal-Am, during a technical advisory committee meeting of the Water Master, said that's not their responsibility, meaning it's not our ratepayers' responsibility all by themselves. There's been no discussion about how to pay for desal water or pure water Monterey expansion water to do protective well levels. And so it is kind of a straw man. And that memo that was sent to the Coastal Commission had really absolutely nothing behind it and no plan in place. There was never any discussion about sizing a desal plant or pure water Monterey to provide additional water for that purpose. And so it became a talking point, but more of a straw man than a legitimate point.
Well, and that's my concern. I don't want us chasing straw man arguments. It wastes everybody's time.
So Dave, when we talking about expanding ASR, we're not talking about expanding it from the river.
No, it would be expansion from the river. It could be either Cal-Am putting in more extraction wells. There is actually a well in their current rate case that would increase supply from the river. We've talked as a district that we could put in extraction wells or collection systems at the river. So conceptually, yeah, it's still the same program, just expanding it. And I think back in 2011 and 12, the question was really raised, well, you've got all this water flowing out to the sea. Can't you just expand pure water Monterey, aquifer storage and recovery to a level that you can get enough water? And what happens is eventually you have no more treatment capacity at the Begonia iron removal plant. So then you'd have to expand that plant. If you're flashing it with chlorine, you'd have to expand that. Then you'd need potentially additional pipeline capacity, which I think at this point we now have with the Monterey pipeline. But the operations in parallel pipeline mode and so forth, it became a game of a large scale of investment in capital costs. So roughly around 2012, we quit looking at ASR expansion, which is kind of a peaking program, right? It's get everything you can in the winter when the river's really flowing and get it in the ground and build up a reservoir. I think it was just viewed as becoming too expensive, that there was a right size for ASR using mostly existing infrastructure, and a wrong size. But short answer, which apparently I'm not accustomed to today, giving you all long answers, would be just, yeah, more river water brought across and used for injection.
I got cut out there. So we're talking about, when we talk about expansion, we're talking about from the river to the basin to.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
Okay, because I get confused when we're talking about doing a bypass and we're talking about extra ASR. I think it's coming from, either come from desal or pure water. So when they talk about expansion, we need to clarify that, which way we are talking. And,
Yeah.
and especially with this bypass, it's getting confused with pure water and desal. But
Yeah,
if it's about the river, it needs to be clarified.
It is, and I think John, and I see Ian's on the line and others, you can also get into a whole deep discussion about molecules versus water accounting. I mean, if for example, you take 50 acre feet from the Carmel River in December and you deliver 50 acre feet to the ASR well field and inject it, it might not be the same molecules, but as long as you got enough came out of the river to match up with what went in injection, you can call it river water. But some of these plumbing issues can mess with that water accounting. The water can be available, we can actually divert it, but we may not be able to get it into injection and so forth. So, I mean, that's just another wrinkle in all this, but you're right. It confuses.
But also, if we're talking about expanding ASR, wouldn't they have to do something with the permits and stuff that we got from the river? Now, we've been talking about modifying them if we can. And I think after hearing this discussion, we need to start working on that if something failed. And that's been coming up. Marine Coastal mentioned it. Now it's getting mentioned again that we're talking about coming from the river if we're talking about expansion. So I think we need to look at that.
Well, as I said, we probably wouldn't do ASR expansion if desal comes online. If pure water Monterey expansion occurs, we wouldn't really need additional water for a number of decades. So maybe at that time you look at what regional desal might look like or expansion of ASR. But yeah, we do need to be clear in what we're talking about. John just did all of the applications for extension on the water rights. And one of those is the potential of maximizing ASR even under the existing water rights. So there's kind of a two-step process. If you really did want to get more out of ASR, you'd want to take the existing water rights and push as much water as you can so that when you license those, you're at a point of maximizing what you have. But if you really want full boat on ASR expansion for whatever reason, desal didn't work out, pure water Monterey expansion, growth is happening faster and you just wanted to augment a few thousand acre feet or 1,000 acre feet, then you might have to carve out another piece of the water right for an expansion of ASR. But the first thing you try to do is maximize the infrastructure using the existing water rights, license those at a higher level. And then if you wanted to expand even more, then, peel off another piece of the water right. But lost in there is the good news that John has now filed on behalf of the district, the 2 applications, one for the A and C right, and then I think last Thursday, the one for the B right. So we'll be waiting to hear back, but we did what we needed to do.
Mr. Laredo, is there anything the district can do?
Well, I think as Dave Stoll said, we have filed to clarify the rights to expand ASR. So I think that gets us in the queue.
But I'm talking about with the water master. Anything else can the district do? Where are we in that? You know, I know we wasn't as a part of the case as we should have been, as I feel, because I was on the board we're doing this adjudication. So where do we play at in this? You know, just technical or do we
Well, I
have
think
any say?
we have more than a technical role. We have a voice with the water master, but it's just that we have a voice, and we also have our own retained rights within the basin. So while we are a participant in the water master, we're not entirely subject to the water master's oversight.
Thank you.
I only have one other question, then I'd like to go out to the public, if there are any comments. My last question is the triennial step down. Didn't that take place? Is 2021 the year where the natural safe yield is equal to the operating yield? Aren't they the same numbers at some point?
Yep. Yeah, and I think that would be October 1 of 2021. Is it, John, is water year basis?
No, it just occurred when we entered this water year, so we're at operating.
Oh, the beginning of this 2021 water year. Yeah, you're right. Right.
And that was codified in the Rule 160, which we then later modified to do the cut down on the river.
On the river, right.
Okay, well, that was just for information for my purposes. Can we see if there are any comments? If Ian is there, I'm not sure who in the public might want to comment, but let's ask.
Well, there are no raised hands.
Okay. Well, this was, I've been digging in and I kind of frustrate myself because I go down a certain path and then I kind of run out of things to think about and then I'm stuck. So anyway, I appreciate this dialogue very, very much, Dave and John. I know you're listening and checking in. So anyway, can we go to if there are no more comments on this subject, I'm willing to go to the next one. Let's ask the committee. All right, well, let's go to the next subject. I'm looking for my agenda.
Yeah, it's an update on Pure Water Monterey. I'm going to give you a little bit, and then we'll ask Maureen Hamilton to step in. As you know, we were doing final conditioning of deep injection well number 2 through December. It's basically complete, and as of Friday, January 1st, when people were still working, believe it or not, it was injecting at 490 gallons per minute, which is very close to its last injection rate. But now they'll be ramping it up through the course of the next couple of weeks to see if we can't get to a higher setting, roughly 900 to 1,000 gallons per minute, and maintain it steadily. So that's a good sign. Year to date, and when I say year to date, fiscal year to date, I think at some point we're going to try to amend the water purchase agreement so that we can plan costs on a fiscal year basis, but account for water on a water year basis. But to date, our best month was November, because in November we still had injection from deep injection well number 2, and deep injection well 1 came back online before deep injection well 2 went off. So November, we did just under 223 acre feet. December was 174 acre feet. The total injected to date is 989.9, so call it 990 acre feet since July 1. There sits in operating reserve 1,053 acre feet. So we had water going in the ground prior to July 1. basically from February forward. So that was building the reserve. The company water delivered to date is 675 acre feet with 6 months to go in the fiscal year. So when Deep Injection Well 2 comes back online, maximizes, because it is back online now, then we should get a sense of where we stand on a steady state. Clearly, I think, in my opinion, we can probably do about 280 acre feet a month. Not really sure, but January will be an almost complete month, and so we should get a pretty good indication from January, and then certainly February. Of course, February is a short month. With that, Maureen, I don't know if you want to add anything to the conditioning, but maybe you can update us also on the Deep Injection Well number 3 and 4, mobilization and development.
Sure. Trying to make sure I got this all set up right. Yeah, we finished the Deep Injection Well 2 final commissioning on New Year's Eve, got water going back into DIW2, and additionally, we started injection at VZ2 on that same day. The initial look is that we definitely recovered substantial injection volume at DIW2. We were also thrilled to see that the well was not sanding nearly what it had been prior to the final commissioning. So we're optimistic, but only a couple days in. I'm still waiting for the geologist numbers for some specific injection capacity at the higher rates. Currently, I believe we're at 700 and we'll ramp up to 900 on Wednesday. For DIW 3 and 4, not much is going on besides getting submittals approved and ordering materials. They can't order until we get the submittals approved. And I'm very happy the contractors ordered some pipe, even though it's well ahead of time. There's supposed to be a ductile iron shortage next year. So they're just going ahead, and every submittal that's approved, they're going to go ahead and order it and have it delivered to site.
Is there a ductile iron futures market? I mean, how do they really know? Yeah. Okay.
So Maureen, are we behind yet? Well,
We are
asking
not
now,
behind.
Are we
no,
behind?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, that's good.
And I have a quick update item related to this too, Dave, is the as we finish the final commissioning work for 1 and 2, we had designed our specs to do that work based on our experience with our ASR wells. And those wells were commissioned after they had been used for a much longer period of time. Because we did that, we put more acid than we needed to in the first well that we did. Usually we put the acid in the well and the pH, the acid dissolves the materials in the well bore and on the screen. And the acid usually is at about a 4 or a 5 pH when you go to remove it from the well. But the acid the pH of the well was at a 1.5 for the first well. And it took us a few more days to get it out of the hole than we had spec'd for. So we did go over the budget by about $3,000. So that was an update for Director Alvin, because I know he likes to hear.
I appreciate that. So y'all throw that in the cost.
We'll be bringing it back to the admin to update to amend the contract.
Okay.
All right, thank you. I'd like to see if there's any more comments or questions from the committee. We can ask the public again, just raise your hands anytime. Anytime you raise your hand, we'll try to call attention to it. So, Sarah, try to keep your eyes open, peeled. Can we go to the next item, ASR construction update?
Yeah, and I guess for the benefit of the callers, if they wanted to raise their hand, they have to press star what, Sarah?
Star 9.
Believe it's star 6.
Yeah, I think it's star 6. Yeah,
Star
we moved-
6. Star 9 is the alert, star 6 is to be able to see.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so the final item is an update on ASR construction. And Maureen, we'll just turn it over to you. I guess we don't have anybody driving by it regularly anymore now that Molly's moved to the East Coast. But let's hear what you have.
Well, we continue to be done. We got our final payment request in and I submitted that to our system. We'll review the punch list. I know for a fact they've got at least 90% of the punch list items done and we'll release their retention. Cal-Am is going to start using it for ASR 3 this week, I believe, tomorrow or Wednesday. So it's very exciting as we take ASR 1 down for its rehab.
And where are we in terms of speccing out dechlorination?
That one of the tasks I have on my list this week is to talk with John and Chris Cook about what is functionally possible and what the payback would be if we don't put in the parallel pipeline and we just have dechlor.
Right.
Just have dechlor at AS Santa Margarita.
Right, because then you'd have that minimum of a month of downtime just to take care of chlorination byproducts. So
Yeah, and I'm getting an RFP pulled together as well for somebody to help get that design now that we've got our as-builts in.
okay. And for those of you who maybe weren't paying close attention, the ASR facility with the new chemical building is the photo on our annual financial report cover this year. So
Good.
we
Good. Yeah, we. Good to hear. Good to hear. Yeah, very good.
So the chemical building is up and running?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yeah, we're going through, we're meeting Cal-Am in the field tomorrow morning, and we're going to start putting ASR,
okay.
all of the first testing for the Department of Drinking Water permit tomorrow.
So is this the first announcement y'all making of that? Because I think the public would like to know that we got a project up and running in a timely manner. So let's add that to the agenda, do something with that. That's good
Yep.
news. To me, that's good news because you're not.
Well,
behind.
yeah, and the other piece of good news on that subject John was just alluding to, Cal-Am as the operator or the extractor, they get their certifications, and the well itself has to be certified for production. And so they've spent, I don't know, it's been the better part of a year, John, working with Division of Drinking Water to get ASR Well 3 basically permitted for extraction. So now, all the work had been done pretty much at ASR 1, and now we'll have a second production well that's certified. So they deserve some credit too in pushing that through. Because we knew it could operate in that mode for a couple of years, but it takes a while to work through the permitting process. So maybe we can work up a little something press release. We've been trying to do stuff at ASR for forever, to have like a kickoff or a ribbon cutting or what have you, but it's been the most sneaky little incremental capital project where, hey, it worked fine, we're producing water with it, but we still had a big hole in the ground and no pavement. Then we expanded the backflush pit, and it's just been incremental, and there's still some things that have to get done in terms of landscaping and the drive-through up to the building and so forth. So, and fencing. So I'm not sure when is the best time to announce that it's a complete project, but we've gotten so much out of it in its incomplete state for 7, 8, 9 years.
Except that new water in the system would be the outcome, and that's what we've been looking for anyway. Yeah.
Well, and also permanent treatment capability.
Hmm.
A lot was done with big old plastic hubs and, temporary facilities.
Yeah, I think Alan's got a good point.
Yeah.
Okay, if there's no other comments, I'm getting close here. I'm going to ask the public if they had any comments of anything one last time.
Actually, I'd like to just apprise the board that, and Maureen, maybe you can fill me in whether this was on Pure Water Monterey or on ASR, but we did have a COVID test positive in one of the contractors. And I think that there's 2 more tests that we're waiting on results for from some of the subs that we've been in contact with. And so, fingers crossed, there's no impact on schedule or people. But Maureen, can you add anything to that?
Yeah, it was Pure Water and it was the rehab crew last week. The 2 tests, I work closely, as does the geologist, with one of the drillers. It was one of the 3 on his crew, so we're waiting for the other 2 to test to figure out how exposed we are.
Yeah.
And the symptoms are minor for the gentleman who's been positive, so nobody's in the hospital. We're super relieved
That's
for
great.
that.
Yeah, and also to praise the leadership of Chris Cook a little bit. He took it upon himself to coordinate the 8 water and wastewater agencies in Monterey County to request from the health officials, Moreno and additional public health person, that our essential employees get prioritized for vaccines. So we'll see where that leads. But, these are essential services. We have people in the field all the time. We've got, as Maureen pointed out, we've got contractors and subcontractors. It's very challenging to police. We've had to separate crews so that there's, one person, one truck. I think I've seen that with a lot of the other utilities. So you're not putting a couple of people in a small cab. There are reasons that these people should get vaccinated just so they can continue their essential function. So we'll see where that leads. But Chris did send it in on behalf of all 8 entities. So
I haven't heard anything about it yet.
One more question for me. Those little small wells up in Pure Water, are they operating yet?
yeah, so Maureen mentioned VZ1 is back on at about 50 gallons per minute. I didn't hear about VZ2.
Yeah, VZ2, we just started back up as well on New Year's Eve. So all 4 wells were injecting on New Year's Day.
Thank you.
Is there anyone who can give me any kind of an update on the Sand City desal plant?
Just,
Is it running again
yeah.
up to capacity?
No. John, do you want to weigh in?
I'm not sure if I'm going to ask Dave Laredo. I mean, it's not on the agenda and it's item on our future agenda. We
Sorry.
can easily put that on, but I don't want to interrupt the dialogue if
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
put that on the future agenda.
It's not a discussion item. A simple answer is it up and running can be answered.
Thank you.
okay.
And the answer is yes, it has been. It's still 1 month it's great, the next month it's not so good. So, and there's been no resolution as to a final plan.
Thank you.
More to
It'll be on the
follow.
future.
More follow.
MTF.
Thanks, Dave, for the report on the COVID response and the coordination that was done among the agencies. That's very good. I'm pleased to hear that Chris Cook did that. Any items to be placed on future agendas? We've got one, the Sand City desal update. Anything else? I don't have an item.
Yeah, we agreed that at the board level that the issue of the parallel pipeline would be shelved, but report back or readdressed by the February board meeting. So I think at the next water supply planning meeting, which is going to be in advance of the next full board meeting, we should do an update on the parallel pipeline.
Okay, and it won't be an action item for the committee. It will be an action item on the full board. Is that right? Or only an update?
or it may just be a report at the full board because, you know, effectively, the full board said, let's not do anything on this until there's a resolution of the Coastal Commission permit. Well,
Right, and we need to take action on it, plain and simple.
right.
We need to take action on it. Let's get it on the agenda, either for January or February, but we need to take action on that. So I'm point blank, gotta take action. I'm sorry.
Well, at least for the Water Supply Committee coming up, it'll be discussed and then we'll see what happens at the board meeting. Any other items on future agendas? Then this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, good night.
I want to thank Maureen's communication system tonight. It was very good. Thank you. All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.